life is always happening for you. Things are always happening for us all the time, but it's hard to see it that way when we're wrapped up in the same routines that don't serve us anymore. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of Vain, the first official of many visual episodes. I'm very blessed, as always, to be here with you today for season 2, episode 1, where we get into reinvention, restarting new routines, daily habits, and everything that we need to get into to actually live a life that we love. Persephone back and spring actually being ahead. I think it's really important that we make sure we're putting the same amount of spring cleaning around our internal lives as we do with our external environments. And that comes with resetting the habits and norms that we've implemented in our lives and kind of renovating what's not working anymore. And I think regardless of how comfortable we get, it's important with the sun being out again that we take this opportunity of renewal to actually build a life that we enjoy and that we desire and get out of our own ways, because a lot of the times we are, and then we blame it on our external circumstances. It's easy to feel consumed by your circumstances when you feel like you're stuck in a rut, when you've spent winter doing the exact same thing every single day, seeing the exact same people, and waiting for something to change when you haven't allowed for change to come into your life. And I think it's really great that we have this opportunity to completely change things, and so we can actually allow for new opportunities to enter our lives. And once we do let that happen, we can start living a little happier. But that starts with how you start your day. That starts with how you talk to yourself. And a lot of that comes with a desire. Over the past few weeks, we've been getting into a lot about finding your own authentic purpose and living outside of another person and deconsuming yourself from relationships. And it's a little scary sometimes to think about those next steps when you start to walk on your own again and enjoying life outside of another and just figuring out who you are. It's getting a little more intentional about how you decide to live. When you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is open your phone and scroll on TikTok and give your energy to things outside of you, you're already kind of telling yourself that you're not deserving of that time and that space and that attention that you really need, that you weren't getting. And the point is to take this time to give it to yourself. So when you start taking the steps to really give yourself all the love that you were looking for, it makes it a lot easier to want to enjoy your day, to get to enjoy your day, to have the incentive to do things differently because you know that you are deserving of new things in your life. I feel like a lot of the solutions that we're always given is to break things down and to deconstruct. It's all about critiquing and trying to pull things apart. But I think what's so beautiful about building yourself anew is that it's not necessarily about breaking things down or tearing yourself apart. It's about implementing new things that actually bring you joy, that replace those things that you're not super happy with. And I think once you actually start doing things that you care about and starting your day with things that you love, you'll be more inclined to allow for new opportunities in your life, to allow for new people into your life, to allow for that new beginning that's always been available to you. You just didn't think it was in your reach because of XYZ reasons that inhibit us from self-actualization. We get really comfortable in our hermit mode. We get very comfortable in solitude. And I think that's a beautiful thing because, like I was talking about in my last couple of episodes, it takes those moments of peace and quiet by yourself to really learn what you're like and to learn what you love and to learn what you want from life. But it's another thing to actually exercise that, walk the new talk that you've brought into your life. And that starts with tiny little habits and daily little things that we do to actually create a life that we enjoy and create an existence that we want to be a part of. It starts and it ends with you every single step of the way is an important thing to carry. So you kind of keep yourself accountable when it comes to making these changes and keeping them, because it's one thing to start something and it's another thing to actually, hold it. There's no more excuse. We can actually be outside and we can enjoy it. And that's when we kind of see that we're the ones getting in our own way. The point being is to implement things into your life that create balance and harmony and realign you with everything that you actually desire, everything that makes your heart flutter, everything that makes you joyful. You get to make a decision every day you wake up to do something differently with your life. As you have this newfound sense of self, you get to actually show the world what you've built and what you've created and what you've decided to take back. And that is such a powerful thing. And once you realize that it deserves to be seen, there's nothing really holding you back anymore, is there? No. So I feel like it's really important to, one, acknowledge how much you've built up until this point, to celebrate yourself for everything that you've overcome, and to allow yourself to actually set it free, to set this new you out into the world and test the waters of how it'll be received, because it'll be a beautiful, beautiful experience. When I was finishing off my first year, it was like literally the most hellish time, but it was so beautiful because of everything I was leaving behind and everything I was allowing myself to leave behind, because I made the decision to just be a new version of me. And that didn't mean I had to change how I look. That actually meant that I started from ground zero again. I just started to bring back the things that I loved the most. I was letting my natural hair out and I was wearing less makeup. And that's not to say that those things are the epitome of growth, or you aren't growing if you don't decide to put that into your life. It's just a matter of getting comfortable with the things that used to make you the most uncomfortable in the public sphere. It's one thing to bring out those sides of you. It's another thing to let those sides of you be seen by other people, because that's really how you overcome all that turmoil and all that trauma. Everybody's trying their hardest to show up every day and just exist, to just survive. But we can live past survival. We can actually enjoy rather than fight. We can skip down the street rather than trudge. We can decide how we decide to show up and exist. And that's the beautiful part about this choice that we're given in life. It's that you can make it whatever you want to make it. And it's a matter of feeling deserving of a better life, or feeling like you should just keep ruminating in everything that went wrong. Now that we're out of winter, we don't have to keep analyzing. We don't have to keep reflecting. We can actually just exist as these people that came out of those situations. I feel like the beginning of my show was very centered on that. I was very stuck on telling stories. I definitely needed to acknowledge parts of me that weren't allowed to be seen at some point. But there's a certain level of rumination that is necessary before we need to let it go and move on and create new things into our lives. And that's why I really wanted to get into this episode and into this new season about these new beginnings and these new habits. Is we don't even realize how we're reinforcing our old selves and these versions and these narratives that were forced upon us every single day through our choices. And that's why it's really important that when you wake up in the morning, your day starts with you. It starts with looking up with gratitude and looking in the mirror and seeing somebody who's so incredibly beautiful, and moving in that energy throughout everything you do, throughout every single moment of the day. And that's not to say we can't accept the darker feelings that tend to come up anymore. We're still human. It's not about getting past negative emotions. It's just learning how to befriend them and learn to see what they're trying to reflect, so we can continue to move in this new light that we've created. You start moving in this different frequency and you allow yourself to have these higher vibes. That's when you start to attract parts of your life that you didn't think were attainable. The whole point is to be intentional with what you're doing and what you're saying and how you talk to yourself and how you talk to other people in your head, because it says a lot about what you're allowing into your life and what you're attracting around you. It's getting fresh air outside and deciding to cook for yourself, even though it does take a little bit more effort, because your body deserves the most beautiful, nutritious things. It's wanting to take care of yourself. There has to be this desire. There has to be an incentive. You have to give yourself some kind of incentive to want to do things differently, to want to live better. And it's one thing to have a desire, and it's another thing to actually act on it. And I think that's why it's really important that with every decision that we make, that we're making it with our highest selves in mind. There was a time where I was deep, heavy in my manifestations. I was like, this is exactly what I want, and I'm going to write it down to a T. There hasn't been a single thing that I've written down that I haven't gotten. And it's been a beautiful experience. That's the relationship that I ended up building with God. It didn't always happen in the way that I thought it was going to, but I did end up getting it. And for that to happen, we have to do things differently in our routines to let that in. I think there's this really heavy manifestation culture on social media about just speaking things out. To attract something, you have to vibrate a little differently than you're used to. And to vibrate differently, it's thinking differently. It's talking differently. It's walking in another direction, wanting things to be different, but doing different things so different things can happen to you. Life is always happening for you. Things are always happening for us all the time, but it's hard to see it that way when we're wrapped up in the same routines that don't serve us anymore. And once we see that, we can be a lot more open to change. Change doesn't have to be scary. Change can be really fun if you actually allow it to be. And that starts with you, like everything else. And having that knowing carries a certain responsibility with it. And it's a beautiful responsibility. It's a gift, really, when you think about it. That gift of free will that we all have. the decisions, the choices, they're all up to us to actually make. But you actually have to be thinking of your better self, your higher self. You have to put that person into perspective, into mind when you make those decisions of how you're going to approach things differently. I used to spend a lot of time like thinking about old situations, old people's, old environments, how I could have done those things differently. And I didn't realize how harshly I was pulling myself back. So when I would try to actualize things into the future, when I journal about them, when I do whatever, it wouldn't work and I'd get frustrated. But I didn't realize that like by constantly living in my past and never actually reaching for the future I was writing down, I was constantly in this space of stagnancy. But it only really took living in the present moment and enjoying that present moment to actually get those things that I wanted, to actualize those manifestations and to build that relationship with God that created these things in my life. I couldn't keep thinking that the answers were in what I've already tried, because that is delusion. And don't get me wrong, I love delusion. I'm a delusional ass girl all the time, but not that type of delusion. There's a healthy amount of delusion I feel that's necessary to survive in this world. That's honestly, when you think about it, that's having faith. But there's also a shadow aspect to delusion that tries to pull us back into thinking that things can change by repeating the same cycles. And now that we're in a new season and we have the opportunity to get outside and do things differently, I think it's really important that we take advantage of that, because there's very few opportunities that you get to live the way that you live right now. When you think about how much we change and we grow and we evolve and we move on, how do you really want to look back on these moments? My roommates and I were trying to move last year out of our residency. We were really concerned about how we were going to continue our jobs and our livelihoods where we were, given the fact that we didn't have a home. And I wrote down a very specific address in my journal about where I wanted to live. We had seen this house. I absolutely loved it. It was like my dream apartment. And I wrote it down in my journal about how we were going to live there and exactly how it was going to look like and how my life was going to look like. And we continued to get rejected by every single place that we'd seen, even from that one place. And not coincidentally, I don't believe in coincidences. By the time it actually came to us moving out, the day that we were packing our things, we got a call from our agent saying that we got that exact same apartment on the exact same street, just like 5 numbers off. It's things like that that really gave me hope and faith of creating the life that I wanted. But I had to be accepting to those new opportunities. I had to hold that faith every single time we were in moments of rejection, because those places were never for us. We ask for things and we deserve those things, but we have to believe that God is actually going to come through. We have to believe that we're deserving of being shown up for, but that means we have to show up for ourselves in every single way in between before we're actually given what we want. And that's not to say like everything's a test, but it kind of is. It kind of is a test of strength. And the only way you can really have that resiliency, the only way you can really have that solid foundation is when you implement those new habits from ground zero, from yourself, starting with your beliefs. Let's start with how you talk to yourself. It's a domino effect with everything else that you bring into your life. The way that you talk to you will affect the way that you let yourself go outside, which will affect the people that you interact with, which affects the opportunities that you bring, and everything else just follows. And those changes are always going to start from an internal stance before they show out in our environments. And that's why it's so important to start the day and to start your life and to start your choices thinking about yourself, thinking about yourself in the most highest regard, being a little vain and embracing it and enjoying that aspect of you. It's okay to be a little selfish, and that doesn't mean you have to disregard other people. It just simply means that you need to pay attention to how you treat yourself. I feel like it's instinct to get caught up in the ways that we once protected ourselves. They worked, but those aren't very solid foundations to continue a new life of happiness. I think it really takes understanding your habits and deconstructing them and soothing whatever implemented them in the first place to move on in a productive manner. I used to do a lot of things subconsciously, and honestly, I still do. We are human. We're not ever conscious of everything that we're doing all the time. But I had to take a lot of time and put a lot of attention on myself in those moments of solitude during those winter hours to figure out exactly why I was moving the way I was moving and why I was getting so stuck on harping on the same circumstances over and over again. And like I sat there and I talked to myself for 40 minutes. Like if you heard me outside my bedroom, I probably sounded like a crazy person because I just had conversations looking into my iPad for 45 minutes at a time. And it does seem kind of nuts when you think about it. Like the same way that we're willing to sit and therapize with others, maybe not therapize is the word, to sit and empathize with others and to help our friends deconstruct their feelings, we also have to be able to do that with ourselves. Building these new habits and routines is necessary, but to do that, you have to be able to become your own friend. I had to start seeing myself like I was my own best friend. And that's what allowed me to actually attract the things in my life that I wanted, is that I didn't feel like I deserved any less. My self-esteem wasn't in the pits of hell anymore because I was actually taking the time to appreciate who I was and to appreciate my feelings and to acknowledge them and to let them go so they weren't showing up subconsciously in different fonts and variations in my life. Back at the time, I would always think that that was just circumstance, that life was just against me, and that's not a healthy way of acknowledging our circumstances when we're trying to do things differently. It's okay to get a little step back from the ways we were betrayed and hurt and traumatized, but it's equally as important that we put it down, that we move on, and that we take these new moments, these new cycles, these new seasons to do something differently about it. And that's why I was kind of getting into earlier about harping on the past, is that it's comfortable. We get a little comfortable. I was talking about this in my other episodes, actually. We get a little comfortable in chaos. We get a little comfortable in pain. We end up so okay with things going a certain way, even though we're unhappy with it, that we almost start attracting more of that into our lives. It's about piecing things together, piecing parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily understand or want to see, and allowing ourselves to feel whole with every single one of those aspects and continuing to move in that light. That's a big part to remember too, that we're not moving towards perfection in any means possible. This isn't a journey of existing without misfortune. It's about alchemizing that misfortune. It's about using that pain and transforming it to something beautiful. You know, like lemons are bitter as hell. Life will throw them at you all the time, and you can really juice into something sweet. Make yourself some lemonade and serve it up to your community and be that person for other people. But for us to do that, I feel like we always have these big dreams about how we want to show up for others and create beautiful things and these legacies. But for us to do that, we actually have to start with the little things in our lives that are making it difficult to envision a better future. And that's completely within your control. I used to think that I was really helpless to my circumstance. This mentality that things were just the way that they were. And it was stopping myself with every single one of those thoughts and rewriting that story that allowed for growth, for movement, for new things. And didn't mean I didn't slip up. I was trying to put myself out everywhere all the time, anywhere that I could, with new opportunities. And I got scammed out of $800 and I got into really toxic relationships, but I still made it out stronger every single time, because that's what those things, they do for us. We alchemize them and we become better people every single time. This is an ample time to shine in every way that you've ever desired. Look back in your journal of everything that you've written of how you want to live and just do it. It doesn't mean we have to jump head first, but start with one little thing that you can add in your day. I started singing out loud in the streets. This girl looked at me like I was crazy the other night, and I still didn't care because, like, what? Of course I'm going to belt to Hamilton at 10 p.m. at night while I'm walking on the sidewalk. Like, why wouldn't I? Because why care? Why care so much about how we're going to look when it makes us so happy to finally exist in the ways that we've been dreaming of? We need to get back to those little childlike selves. And I've been talking about that for a while now, but it's true. And it's one thing to let those dreams come back up, and it's another thing to let ourselves live them. And I think that's a beautiful thing that you can do for yourself. I think it's really important that we're conscious of our thoughts, as those thoughts will create our actions, and our actions will continue to create our realities. And you can create a whole new circle that's completely up to you. And knowing that that's available to you now, I hope that you take this next week to actually live how you want to live and to enjoy that life that you're creating. Which brings me into my next episode next week, where we are getting into creativity and joy and that childlike spirit that you're allowed to bring out, and you can bring it out shamelessly and free. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me again. Sending you all of my love from my corner of the earth. And I hope to see you again next week. Goodbye.